here, kind of like you guys. Okay, so let's just dive in straight with Network School. I'll say a little bit about kind of like the I guess like the product, what's actually happening on the ground itself, and then I'll talk a tiny bit about what ARC's doing, kind of like at Network School, and a little bit wider, okay? And I'll try and run through that in, sort of like 8-10 minutes, and hopefully I'll give time for any of you to ask any kind of like questions, kind of like for you. So, Network School started about 18 months ago now, and it was effectively just a 3-day conference where then a few people hung around and lived together with Balaji. This was in sort of like October 2020, kind of like fall, and this is in a place called Forest City in Malaysia. It's not in Singapore. There's a hotel in Forest City, the Marina Hotel, that effectively Balaji kind of like leased the entire kind of like hotel. This has a few hundred rooms and a whole bunch of common facilities, and effectively we've been living in that hotel as a community from about 18 months ago. It only really kind of like kicked off again in March last year, where it was more formal. People were coming in and staying for kind of like month-long periods kind of like of time. And whereas like 1 year ago when I was there was maybe only 70 or 80 people that were kind of like there on a given month. Right now, and that's not just in the hotel itself, but in the apartment buildings that are surrounding it. Because like, why did Balaji choose this particular location called Forest City? Is because actually it's network stage like talking about cloud communities, sort of like manifesting in kind of like the real world. And it's almost sort of poetic that if you look at Forest City on like Google Earth and you rewind 10 kind of like years, all you'll actually see is water, because it's reclaimed land and water with clouds above it. So actually, that literally is like clouds that have now turned into this reclaimed land. And they built this island and they built accommodation for a couple 100,000 people. So it opened when COVID hit, and it never really kicked off. And so really, Forest City is known as a ghost city, and that's why Balaji chose it. It's like, here's a whole bunch of like empty real estate that we can come and start to kind of like to populate, I guess. Now, a year ago, it really was empty, and I have to say that already it's changing dramatically, not just because of the Network School people, but it's really making a big difference. And there's now, I guess, several thousand people which are kind of like living on this island. But like I said, what does Network School like literally look like kind of like today? We have people are living in this hotel and are staying in apartments kind of like nearby, coming in long term. And the core of kind of like the experience or the product is a monthly subscription. It's either $1,500 or $3,000. I can tell you a little bit about this in a minute. But like for $1,500, you get access to the entire you get all of your accommodation, all of your food, all of the programming, access to all of the communal spaces, and access that includes a gym with like a whole bunch of workout classes every day. So I guess like when we talk about Network School being about learning, and earning, and I guess like even underneath that is this infrastructure of I guess like accommodations, apartments, and food. So what does that really look like? For $1,500, if you're there for short term, but just like a month, you share a room in the hotel. If you pay $3,000, you get an entire room for yourself. If you sign to stay there for long term, and there's now I think approaching 200 people that are now on 12-month contracts kind of like with us, the same $1,500 gets you a private room in a 2-bedroom apartment, which has an open plan kitchen, dining room, office, lounge. It's like a really, really nice setup. And for $3,000, you end up getting, again, just a big 3-4 bedroom apartment for yourself that you can then move your family in or whatever you kind of like. But it's not just the accommodation, that also gets you communal meals, and so it's all Brian Johnson inspired. It's not to the letter, but it's, breakfast, lunch, and dinner is basically created by Network School, and it's all super healthy, and it's pretty great. Like, I've been eating it for a year, pretty much, and to me, it completely works. Again, I think it's maybe like a little bit fussy or don't care more about it being super tasty versus healthy, then maybe it can be a little bit, it can grate on you after a number of months, but food's super healthy, all the meals are communal, and yeah, and it's great. There's then like a whole bunch of these kind of like community spaces at Network School, like the co-working, where it's just co-working, you just go, you've got a desk, it's all included. There are like cafes and other kind of like spaces that you can just sort of like use, and then all of the event spaces that anyone that's there can actually just like book. So you as an attendee, if you want to talk about your startup or about your community, or just like you want to like run a class or like a hobby you have or something, like you can just like book any of these spaces, and there's like a shared calendar. Like actually any of you can go and like look at what's happening at Network School like right now by just going to Lumen/NS, like LU.MA/NS, and you can see the entire calendar of everything that's kind of happening. It's not kind of like the private events that NS themselves are running, but it's kind of like the open calendar of everyone that's coming. And I guess like the combination of the base infrastructure, the accommodation, with the food, with the spaces that we're able to kind of like use, with the programming that the community put on itself, is sort of like the core of the experience. Network School itself doesn't do too much programming. It's just focused on delivering an incredible infrastructure that then everyone else can sort of like use to do kind of like some kind of things. There's also the park third that I kind of mentioned, right? And there was like a huge gym, and like a whole bunch of people do come and just end up getting like super fit, because there's like 4 or 5 kind of like trainer-led classes kind of like every day, and it's just like a very kind of like healthy kind of like environment. And again, everything is opt-in, everything's sort of optional. General mission is sort of like win and help win, and as long as you're not harming anyone else, you're basically allowed to do whatever you would like. Kind of the product that you actually put that buy into, right? And so like who is typically there? The number one thing that matters, I guess, is the community that people are sharing with. And I guess like it's pretty diverse, to be honest. Like again, like as someone that's been spending a lot of time in these network states or other sort of like Zuzalu communities or places like Prosperous, it's far more diverse than any of these that I've spent time in. And what do I mean by that? Like it's probably, as a white European, or even just as white, like we were in the minority. There's obviously a lot of Asia, India, China, even sort of like Asia Pacific, and Australians and Kiwi, and then but it's very, very diverse in terms of the people that are actually kind of like there. It tends to be, let's say, like a 30-year-old that's building sort of like a technology company and is hustling and working hard. Like people there tend to work really hard, and it's just an incredible space to sort of like if there's a new bot or whatever that's launched like yesterday, someone will be doing a presentation about it tomorrow, and you're going to go and learn and build and do things together. So yeah, it's an incredible community, typically of builders, but it is much more diverse. There's lots of people that like aren't actually building technology companies now, and it's not super crypto-centric either. I'd say probably like 30-40% of people are really kind of like in crypto. There's more people that are building on AI, and there's like a long tail of people that are building kind of like all sorts of kind of like bits and pieces. So one of the things I think people can find a little bit strange if they do come to Network School is actually maybe like how far away it is from like an actual kind of like network state per se. Like we don't day to day, people aren't doing work on like building a city. What they're doing is they're building their own life as part of a community, which is building it in this place, which was empty a year ago. I think that's part of the model. What's very interesting that's been proven is that you can go to a place which is nobody's living, it's considered a fair real estate project, and you can bring that to life. And I think that's sort of the muscle that the Network School team is sort of like exercising there. We talked a lot about like this infrastructure they're building and how this is, I guess, like a platform for individuals or for you to come and kind of like use, but it's also a platform that organizations use. So increasingly we're seeing companies come and kind of like base themselves there and bring their entire teams. If you really want to lock in, I don't actually think there's a better place in the world. Maybe if you want to raise capital, maybe it's not ideal, maybe you should be in SNS or London or something like that. Like if you just need to lock it in build, it's an unbelievable setup for like a team. And then all these other kind of organizations that are starting to leverage it to run experiences to their communities as well. So we've had, whether it's like Base, whether it's like Solana, whether it's Virtuals, whether it's Monad, whether it's all of these sort of like bigger crypto protocols, I will say, have come and have put on like week, month-long programs for their kind of like community. Some experiences like a hackathon, kind of etc. kind of like over there. So it's increasingly being used as sort of like an exhibition case for loads of other organizations. And if you're there as a network schooler that's just living there, like you typically just like always get access to like go and see the speakers or to mingle with those communities. So it really is like this incredible sort of like melting pot. So, you know, you're all, it's pretty open again. It's maybe not as hard to kind of like to get in as maybe kind of like you think. You know, if you're, you know, and again, it's quite diverse in terms of sort of backgrounds that you can have as kind of like people. I think they're much more interested in just like great people that want to kind of like win and help win. You're very welcome to reach out and to pay me to you know, so this maybe starts to talk a little bit more about ARC. ARC is, you know, the only organisation there is that is able to effectively to automatically include people into network school kind of as well. And that's because at a very, very high level, you know, ARC is in the business of building a charter city. So something probably more similar to Forest City underneath kind of like the network school community right now, where we want to basically have a parcel of land where we create something like a special economic zone where you have more writing ability. And then you use that to create like a, you know, kind of like a legal arbitrage that allows middle products which, you know, the host nation is not able to sort of like deliver. And that's what we work on. The reason we're at Network School is sort of amazing selling point. So if you guys care about this topic that we're talking about here, you know, you're going to meet a whole bunch of other people that care about that topic at Network School. Again, it's very community driven though, so it's like Balaji isn't like doing like workshops on like how to build a network state or like any of this sort of stuff, right? It's just sort of like self-delivered. That's part of what ARC does at sort of like Network School. So we've got a few different spaces there, and we talk about being like a layer on top of Network School there for frontier founders. And there's like two types of frontier founders that we really work with. One is people that are more traditional founders, they just happen to be founding in the frontier, and we run a very light acceleration process for them to raise some capital now for that, and we're going to be running our first tickets from kind of like for May into people that are actually building that. You know, it's taken a little bit of time to build momentum, but there really is this incredible talent density now, and I think like as an investor, if any of you are, you come to Network School and you'll see, you know, there are some really amazing talented people. People tend to be at the beginning of their journeys, not kind of like late stage, but that's, you know, that's super cool. And then we also talk about being, you know, ARCing for frontier founders and people that are actually building the frontier itself. And so we run programming and workshops on actually like what we're doing here, how do we build network states or charter cities. And so that's the role that we perform at kind of like Network School. Again, please reach out to me if you fancy getting kind of involved in what we're doing there. But all of that is a staging ground. It's like part of why I'm here at the British Library is that you know, ARC is very actively working and negotiating with governments right now to, you know, get these effectively these charters, which gives us the autonomy to write the laws, and very specifically working on a new British overseas territory right now. We have a lot of land identified, which we believe that legal state of effectively is an unrecognised current, you know, independent territory, and we're basically building the legal case and putting that before the government over here. So that's what I'm, you know, doing kind of like briefly here as I happen to kind of like end up in London. But I don't want to talk too much about that because this is a chat about Network School. So I've really spoken for quite a bit of time now, and I want to give you the opportunity for you to kind of like ask any questions. And I think, you know, yeah, so let me just hand over. Did that make any sense? Can I ask you some questions kind of like first?
Okay, yeah, so essentially this is the Solar Fund City that is plug and play for digital nomads. You can come there and essentially find a whole city that's like zigzag with events and food and really healthy food. I don't know if you know who Brian Johnson is, but he is a longevity athlete. So scientifically proven to be the healthiest person on the world, and he's essentially eating the meals that he designed specifically for this. So yeah, plug and play city that digital nomads can join to
think someone's talking but I can't hear anyone other than Dorian, so please repeat if any questions may be.
Do you have any questions for James?
So, I think 16 weeks in reply to any email they receive.
Okay, thank you, James. We're good. We'll have on.
Perfect, thank you very much. I've put some links in the chat, I'll send them to you as well. Good luck, I hope you have a good rest of your event, all right?
Thank you. Bye bye.
Perfect, cheers.